Right. So my intent is to not trigger anybody. You all know what triggers are, right? That's where you hear something or you see something that affects you personally. My intent is to not trigger anybody. Some of the education I'm going to provide today is not super nice to hear. If you're affected by the presentation, there's a ton of community leaders in the room that you can reach out to. Don't leave the presentation if you're affected by something. Reach out and talk to somebody. I've had the pleasure of meeting a whole bunch of great people since I've been here, last time and this time. They're incredibly compassionate members of your community. Reach out to those people, okay? Gilbert and I were out in Vancouver. That was super humbling, right? We're just two guys from the prairies, and Vancouver reached out to us directly to come and provide some education and training to those folks. When I talk about setting the tone, the educators in the room, the community groups, and all of you, especially people that wear a uniform, it's our responsibility to set that tone for the incident. So if I respond to people that wear a black and white checkered sweater, this guy here, I hate people that wear checkered sweaters. I hate it. I hate them. And I bring that bias and that stigma and that venomous hate to my scene. If I bring my personal bias to my patients, that incident is going to spiral out of control very, very quickly. Does that make sense? So it's up to us and you to set the tone for that incident. Treat people with respect and dignity and be compassionate, right? If I typically bring my own bias, it could be racism, prejudice, hate, whatever I bring, it's because I'm lacking education and I'm lacking knowledge. If I educate myself on why he wears a black checkered sweater, that bias and hatred and all those dark feelings I feel will fall off of me, trust me. I present it to thousands of frontline providers, and when you reflect on your bias, you educate yourself, you start to understand why some people live the life that they do. And it's not my duty, I don't have the right to stand over somebody and dictate to them. Call them a bum. Get a job, you bum. You're pissing me off by calling 911 all the time. I don't have that right. I've been fortunate, very fortunate in my life. I've never faced personal trauma. So I don't have the right to stand over somebody and to dictate and to cast judgment on them. Okay? So everybody, when I talk about bias, I want you to ask yourselves quietly, how do you view people that are your peers that are struggling with issues? It could be addiction, substance use, trauma, mental health issues. How do you view people that are dealing with those acute social issues? Right? In Winnipeg, when we drive by somebody standing on a street corner with a sign, looking for anything helps, give them change. You know what a lot of people do? They drive by them and they throw garbage in their face. When we used to have pennies, they would throw pennies in their face. Get a job, you stupid bum. That's how a lot of society views these folks. Somebody loves that person. There's a root cause of how they got there. So it's our job to put your hand on that person's shoulder and say, tell me what your story is. That's what your job is. Your job is not to isolate and push people away. Okay? A big reason why a lot of young adults your age are dabbling in alcohol or substance use is something as simple as bullying, being isolated. Because you don't wear the cool clothes, you don't make the team, you don't think you're good looking enough. We all need to realize the damage that does to your peers. You have no idea. That stays with them for their entire lives. Okay, it pisses me off that in 2023, I still have to talk to high schools about bullying and isolating your peers. Okay? Who's had an opioid here before? Anybody brave enough to put their hands up? Okay, a couple of you have. How about a Tylenol 3, Tylenol 2 with codeine, right? So a lot of you have had opioids then. So codeine is an opioid. It's a low-level opioid, but sometimes that's the introduction to young adults with opioids. They'll seek Tylenol 2s and Tylenol 3s for that codeine. The problem with that is to get the effect you're looking for, they have to take large amounts of Tylenol. And what that does is that will eventually kill your liver. I've had a lot of great young people in our community that have taken handfuls of T3s It doesn't get the effect they're looking for, but they've just destroyed their liver. So sometimes T3s are the start of their drug use with opioids. Opioids, very briefly, the only people that can administer opioids are physicians and advanced care paramedics. That's it. And there's a big difference in the stuff you're going to get from a healthcare professional versus the stuff you're getting off the street. Kind of what happens when you take a drug like fentanyl is it travels to what's called an opioid receptor site in your brain. So you take an opioid, it travels to that part of your brain and it sits on there. And it's very, there's a street term called a kill pill. Anybody heard of a kill pill before? Right? So a kill pill refers to a criminally manufactured pill that looks like something it's not. Fake Xanax, fake Oxy, fake Percocet, fake T3, fake T2. And they're often criminally produced fake pills with enough fentanyl to kill multiple people. And what society thinks is it only happens to one demographic, right? It only happens to people that you see struggling on the street that are homeless. That is not the case, right? People that don't have a home, they can't hide their addiction in their big fancy $1 million house. People that have a home can hide their addiction, they can hide their trauma. It happened to one of my best friend's sons. One of my best friends is a cop in Winnipeg. He's a very, very compassionate man. And his boy did not use drugs. And what I can tell you is, as a paramedic for 24 years in Winnipeg, I have no idea how much death I've seen in 24 years. I've lost count years ago. What I can tell you is when I respond to an incident that's dark, right? A hard incident, a murder, a suicide, an overdose, I can feel that energy before I see my patient. As I walk up to that house, I can feel that energy. And my buddy Dan, when he was getting ready for work one day, walked by his son's bedroom and he felt that energy. He's in his home and he stopped at his son's door. He had that energy, and what happened was his son had a sinus infection. He hadn't slept in days. He was super desperate. He was not a kid that used drugs. His best friend said, "Aaron, I have a pill that's just going to help you get some rest. It's going to help you sleep." He took that pill in his living room and he went to bed. My buddy Dan walked into his son's bedroom on a Sunday morning and put his hand on his son's back, and he knew that his son was dead. In his autopsy, they found a pill fragment with enough fentanyl to kill 8 people. That is what he had in his body. So when you hear about the drugs of 2023, they are not the drugs that my generation dealt with. It's an incredibly unregulated, toxic, poisonous drug supply. And I don't care who you are, the people that are even selling these drugs cannot guarantee what they're selling. They don't know. People that are selling drugs in Manitoba, often in Canada, are so removed from where that drug is being made. They often don't know what they're selling. So I don't want to hear, "I've known my dealer, it's my brother, my cousin, my neighbor, my buddy." It doesn't matter. They often don't know what they're selling. When the federal government is testing these street drugs, they're coming back for an arm's length of different toxic, deadly drugs. Okay? Too many parents are finding their kids dead. Too many members of our community are finding our communities dead from these drugs. And people often say, why are they making drugs that are killing people? They don't care. They don't care. There's no quality control in when they make these street drugs. So what happens is, if I make my own drug supply, it's like making pancakes, right? If I take 10 cups of white flour, that's my bulking agent for my drugs. That's what makes my drug supply bigger, makes me more money. Then I take a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda or fentanyl and I dump it in that big mixture of cutting agent, and I start mixing my drugs. I can't control where that teaspoon lands in that mixture, nor do I care. And then I start pumping out pills. And what you get is sometimes these hot spots of fentanyl, which is what happened to my friend's son. Enough to kill 8 adults in one pill. That drug scene is completely changed, okay? Fentanyl, opioids are supposed to be designed for pain. So trauma from a fracture, medical pain, surgery pain, cancer patients can be given fentanyl. And lots of the big stuff is fentanyl, Demerol, carfentanil, Oxy, Percocet, codeine, fentanyl being the biggest. And I've got some drug testing results to show you a huge amount of street drugs are laced or cross-contaminated with fentanyl. That's why a lot of people are dying. Fentanyl is about 100 times more deadly than morphine. And I'm hearing from the community leaders that morphine can be a big issue locally here. I would challenge you to test those morphine pills or whatever the morphine is here. I guarantee you some of it's going to come back positive for fentanyl. Guaranteed. Okay? When you talk about street drugs, don't use the words powerful, potent, or strong. Nobody should refer to these drugs as powerful, potent, or strong. They're deadly, lethal, toxic, and fatal. It's not a scare tactic, but people that are addicted will look for powerful, potent, and strong. That's what they chase. So correct the way we talk about these drugs and call them what they are. Lots of drugs you can get different ways. IV. There was fentanyl patches back in the day. We don't really see those anymore. People were selling fentanyl patches. They were cutting them up with razor blades. Some people were eating them, chewing on them. Most extreme case, they were dissolving the patches in vinegar and shooting them with needles. Lots of different ways. Most of it's going to be in pill form. Who eats Nerds candy here? Right? Yeah, I used to eat buckets of that stuff when I was a kid. There's something that's called Nerds or popcorn. And what they do is they found a way to cook the fentanyl. At the end of the cook, they add a can of root beer, grape crush, or orange soda. And what it does is it flavors it, colors it, looks and tastes like Nerds candy, but it's fentanyl. And that's floating around the streets of our province, of our country. That is another level of low to me. When you're purposely making a deadly drug like fentanyl look and taste like candy. That's another level of low to me. In Vancouver, they don't know what Nerds or popcorn is. They call it Pebbles out there. So they brand it differently, right? Just like some of the communities in our province are very unique and different, what you call a drug in Norway House might be different than Churchill or the Paw or Thompson. They can brand it differently, okay? Most of it you'll take by pills. You can inhale it. Who's heard of blotters before? Blotter tabs. You've all heard of acid though, right? Which is interesting because acid is not super big anymore. These look like acid, but these are blotter tabs. And what they do is they dip the whole sheet in liquid fentanyl, or they spray it with liquid fentanyl, and they break off a piece of paper. They sell it in a dime bag. And people take it like acid. They put it on their tongues, and they absorb the fentanyl through their mucous membranes of their mouth. Okay? I've seen Guns N' Roses blotter tabs, Jets logos, cartoon characters, rap bands. Makes their product marketable and trendy. The bigger rave cities I've been to, Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, people wear these on their bodies and then they go off and they party. I've seen them wear it on their foreheads. They throw a toque or a bandana on. When they heat and sweat, they absorb the drug through their skin that way. Lots of different ways. And again, they can't control where that fentanyl lands on that sheet of paper, right? Stickers. So like kids, children stickers, they can spray that with liquid opioid. And that's like an activated drug sticker now. Lots of different ways you're going to be getting these drugs. Who's heard of Down before? Okay. I do a fair bit of media where I talk about drugs, street drugs, and addiction. We have to stop calling it purple Down. When it first came to Canada, it was always purple. People were looking for purple Down. It's now yellow, pink, brown, orange, red, lots of different colors. We just call it Down. That's heroin cut with fentanyl mixed together. So fentanyl and heroin are deadly enough alone. Now they're combining them, and that's what Down is. Most people are injecting this with needles. You can swallow it, smoke it, snort it. It's incredibly deadly. A lot of people in Winnipeg don't want this drug, but that's what they end up getting. Okay? To further muddy the waters of street drugs, cocaine historically was always white. Right? There has been samples of cocaine that have been pink, brown, purple, orange, black, etc., etc. You don't know what you're getting. Okay? Xylazine, this is a relatively new one. Who would willingly take a veterinary tranquilizer that's designed to sedate horses and cattle? Is anybody going to willingly take that drug that's designed to sedate horses and cows? Probably not. Xylazine is being added to the opioid supply on our streets. There's no treatment for this drug. and it's making people incredibly sick. It's increasing their blood sugars to dangerous high levels, and the anemia, which is lack of red blood cells, is making people incredibly sick. When you're anemic, you don't have the red blood cells to transport oxygen throughout your body. And we can't treat this drug. There is no antidote for it. They're adding this to the opioid supply because a fentanyl high is quite brief. So the drug market steps up and says, we're going to take care of you, my customer. I'm going to give you a better drug that's going to give you a longer high, and that sells your product. It's a disgusting business plan, but it sells their product. In the States, they're being destroyed by this drug. When people inject this drug, it destroys and eats away at that tissue. So where you inject that drug, you end up with these big infected gangrenous wounds. And we're starting to see it down south in Winnipeg. Anything that hits the streets of Winnipeg, it's a matter of time. Right? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but it's like we watch the States, Vancouver, Toronto, and Halifax, and we know Winnipeg is going to get the drugs that they're getting today. It's just a matter of time. So there's versions of fentanyl out there that are resistant to treatment. So they are naloxone-resistant opioids. These are drugs that the criminal element is manufacturing on their own. These are not pharmaceutical-grade drugs. The pharmacies are not making these types of fentanyl. These aren't designed for medicine. There's types of criminal fentanyl on the market that's 20, 40, 60, 80 times more deadly than fentanyl. So carfentanol is 10,000 times more deadly than morphine. There was a case in Winnipeg where 2 men were found dead in their vehicle. And I can only talk about it because it hit the news. They had a package of carfentanol that they opened. A bit of it became airborne. They inhaled that and they were killed instantly. So most of the fentanyl in Canada is already pressed into pills. There's not a cloud of fentanyl waiting to capture you. But if this stuff does become airborne and you inhale it, that could potentially kill you. The problem with Xanax is we're seeing a social trend where more and more young people are using Xanax even if it's not theirs. I've seen kids as young as grade 3, 4, 5, 6 that are playing with Xanax. They're trading it for a fruit roll-up or a can of Coke. They're passing Xanax bars around. The problem with that is if you use high amounts of Xanax, you start to muck with your brain chemistry. And what that gives you is really low lows and high highs, and you seesaw up and down. Not where anybody should be, especially our youth. Growing up is hard enough. You don't want to be seesawing up and down. The problem with this stuff is there's a big supply of fake Xanax out on the market. So if you hear the term Xanny bars or bars, that refers to a pill of Xanax. And if you're prescribed this, your doctor will say break off a piece and slowly dose yourself until you feel better. They're not doing that. They're generally popping that entire pill. The problem with this stuff is they seized over 2 million fake Xanax bars in Montreal, Quebec. And a big percentage came back positive for fentanyl. Not much scares me after 24 years in this job. I've got really thick skin, but that gives me goosebumps because I've engaged our youth, our young kids that are dabbling in Xanax. They're not drug testing. They don't know what they're dealing with. If a child comes into contact with a fake Xanax bar with fentanyl in it, that's likely enough to kill them. So it again speaks to that uncontrolled drug market. You don't know what you're getting. Who's seen an opioid or a fentanyl overdose here before? Okay? It's not nice. We talk about the central nervous system. It's the most acute central nervous system depressing drug out there. So everything that your brain and your spinal cord controls in your body will be slowed down and ultimately turned off. So you can see from the list, bad things start to happen. If you see somebody that you think is affected by a drug, simply look in their eyes. If their pupils, their black point of their eye is very, very tiny, they've likely taken a drug like fentanyl. A lot of other street drugs, they blow your pupils up and make them super big. Fentanyl will constrict their pupils and make them very, very small. Often people will vomit. When you vomit and you're unconscious, you're likely going to aspirate. And that means when you're on your back and you vomit, you inhale all that nasty substance and you aspirate. When you breathe in that vomit, it plugs your lung bases where that gas exchange happens. Oxygen in, CO2 out. It's very difficult for us to treat that. Okay? You might lose your bowel function. A lot of people don't like that one. When you turn off your central nervous system, you lose all of your body control. And your body's angry because you've just put a very toxic drug into it. So your body's going to empty itself, right? If I respond to a call and I smell that, it tells me typically one of three things. You're dead, you've overdosed, or you've had a seizure. That's very typical. That directs me to that patient to say they've probably taken a drug, okay? And on and on and on down the list. Naloxone, who's heard of this medication? Okay, when we talk about naloxone, this is kind of what it looks like. It comes in a kit like this. You don't need to be trained, you don't need to be certified. You can get these kits for free, and this treats an overdose like fentanyl, carfentanil, oxy, so on and so forth. It competes with that opioid on your brain. It tries to remove it from that receptor site I talked about. And in theory, it should allow the patient to start breathing again. It does not work for everybody, though. This medication only works for 5 to 30 minutes and it goes away. An opioid is in your system for about 180 minutes. So what happens if my buddies and I are going to be partying it up tonight and I take fentanyl and one of my buddies calls 911 for me, if I wake up, I often take more drug. And now what happens is I have lots of opioid in my system. We've already used our naloxone, it's done its job, and it leaves my body, and I re-overdose. Okay? So I want people to know what this medication is. In Winnipeg, I'm working with the schools, business places, workplaces to have this medication in it. Okay? When I talk about administration, I'm not going to bore you guys to death with data, but I want you to look at the screen. In 2012, way before the international community said there's an opioid crisis, the opioid crisis started in 2016. But in 2012 in Winnipeg, our paramedics gave it 632 times that year. That's a lot. 632 times. When I created this education in 2016, I wanted to do more than just respond to these patients. We wait for incidents to happen, right? We're like a reactionary service. Paramedics wait for something to happen, then we get dispatched to that scene. And it was often too late. So the number I got for 2016 was that. We doubled our administrations of an opioid antidote over 1,500 times in 2016. You kind of work down the list, you can kind of see what starts to happen. Anybody want to guess why 2018 had such a low dip? Anybody have any wild guesses? Likely because of methamphetamine. 2018 in Winnipeg, meth has always been here, but we saw a huge amount of methamphetamine that year. So our opioid incidence went down, methamphetamine incidence went up. Okay? What do you guys think COVID did to opioids? Do you think living through COVID, do you think it went up, went down, stayed the same? What do you think? Up? Yeah, a lot of people are saying up. All the public health experts I work with said we'll never exceed 2016. Winnipeg's not big enough. We'll never exceed 2016. 2020, almost 2,700 doses in Winnipeg. 2021, almost 3,300 doses. Last year in Winnipeg, almost 3,700 doses just for paramedics. That's not harm reduction groups, families, grassroots groups, women's shelters, men's shelters, etc., etc. Almost 4,000 times we had to dose people in our community because of drugs like fentanyl. Okay? These are opioid incidents. So these are individual patients. In 2012, 357 patients were affected by opioids. 2022, almost 2,400 individual humans in our city were affected by drugs like fentanyl. When I talk about these patients, I say 2,400 humans. Did anybody hear me say meth heads, crackheads, junkies, bums, addicts? Hear those terms from my mouth. Those are disgusting, stigmatizing terms that we can't refer to humans as. These are human beings. Everybody has a story, right? So if you know somebody that's affected by substance use or addiction, some of the things you can do is you never use drugs alone. That's like a harm reduction strategy. Don't use drugs by yourself. We want somebody to be with you in case you become unconscious. You can call 911. You can get your drugs tested. Have a kit of naloxone if you're using drugs, trust me. Okay? A story I'm going to share with you is about a man that we dealt with on the streets of Winnipeg for many years. He was a homeless man that lived on the Strip. And the Strip to us is kind of the Main Street area, right? Main and Higgins area. This is a man that lived on the Strip. He was homeless for a long time. And every single system failed this man. And in my career, I can say he was the dirtiest, smelliest, most unkept human I've ever seen in my career. And that says a lot. How do you think our society treated him? Did people look to embrace him? Did anybody put their hand on his shoulder and say, tell me what your story is? What brought you to this point? Nobody did. Every system failed him. He passed away a number of years ago, but I'll never forget the one night we were treating him. This man lived in a wheelchair. That's where he lived. We stood him out of his wheelchair, and out from his pocket fell an immaculate, pristine card. It was his World War II vet card that fell out of his pocket. And this man was one of the Indigenous fighters that fought in World War II for the country we are benefiting from today. And I know some of you have heard this story. What I say that's heartbreaking is when I travel the country with this programming and I go into modern day universities, high schools, workplaces. I spoke at a conference the other day in front of about 900 people. And I bet you 98% of everybody I talk to does not know the history of Canada, does not know the history of what we did. The soldiers that returned from the World War that looked like me, your stereotypical white male wearing a uniform, we went down this path this way, which was a beautiful red carpet. We were welcomed as heroes. We were given pension, benefits, housing. Everybody welcomed us back home. We were heroes, right? The Indigenous fighters that fought in the World War were one of the first groups to say, I'm going to fight for my country. One of the first groups. When they returned from the war, they started going down this path as they should have. They were stopped and they were told to go away, you go that way. They were not allowed to go down this beautiful red carpet. They were not given a pension, benefits, or housing. It was illegal for them to vote, and it was often a crime to practice their beautiful ceremony. They were told to go away. And a lot of these fighters often lost their status, which meant a lot of them were not able to return home. So for those of you that don't know that history, I beg of you to read that history. And I'm doing the best job I can do to educate the masses. Educate yourself on what some of that generational trauma looks like. Okay? Okay, so at the end of the day, just before we take a break, you guys have been very patient. What I want you to do is, when you look at the people sitting around you, when you look at your peers that are sitting next to you, behind you, peers that are in front of you, ask yourself if you actually know what their story is. Do you know what they're dealing with? Okay, what was humbling to me is naloxone, when we started to hand this out to the community as paramedics about 2 years ago. The number of uniformed and city employees that came to me in confidence to say, can I get one of these kits because I'm dealing with this at home, was incredibly humbling to me. Addiction, substance use does not have boundaries or barriers. These drugs don't care what you look like, where you're from, what your skin color is. It doesn't matter. It affects everybody.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what Corey was presenting. When we were in Vancouver, we had a huge amount of Indigenous people that were on the east side of Vancouver. And if anybody knows what that means, is that Vancouver is a real hotspot for people using illegal drugs. So, you know, when we looked at that population, I said to the person who was running the safe injection site, I said, I see a lot of my relatives here, Indigenous people, 5% of the people that were there are only from Vancouver. Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, a little bit from Ontario, were the Indigenous population that came and stayed in Vancouver for the climate. And there was like 2 blocks of tents and cardboard. It was homeless city over in Vancouver, and it's like that in Seattle, Washington. And unfortunately, it's starting to pick up in Winnipeg. And just in the news this morning, yesterday, they found 2 people on Sutherland Avenue close to the Indigenous Center passed on because of something that was taken the night before. And this was in a homeless shelter. And we're finding it more and more that a lot of our people and people that are using substances are going to the streets of Winnipeg and trying to stay there all winter. And everybody knows how cold it gets here in Manitoba. It's really hard for the frontline workers and for everybody to try to keep everybody safe and warm and and give them that help that they need. So when you guys are listening to this information from Corey, I want you to take something away from the presentation. What hit home to you? What makes sense to you? What you've seen in our community? What you heard of in our community? We have an issue here in Norway House. We have a very, very big issue. And it's the information that you are getting today that's going to inform you to make that choice for tomorrow, so we don't have these tragedies that are happening, what Grant talked about this morning. We have to make sure that the next generation, you guys are strong. You guys have choices. You guys can make those choices. You guys can do whatever you want to do in your lives. So remember that. We got so many people here in the community that work hard to try to give you that positive message. Teachers, frontline staff, leadership. We're all trying our hardest to make sure that you get that message. Maybe something's going to spark and you're going to say to yourself, I'm really grateful that I heard this information. And like I said in the ad that was playing all week, reach out. There's nothing, ashamed for anybody to raise their hand and ask for some assistance when it comes to any kind of substances, anything that's happening. And I want to talk a little bit about alcohol. Corey mentioned that, but what I've noticed in all the communities that I've traveled to in the last 15 to 20 years, alcohol is one of the major leading factors in our communities that leads to other substance misuses. A lot of our youth are finding themselves in parties with other youth and they got a whole bunch of alcohol. And what happens to our youth when they're intoxicated? And then somebody comes in with drugs, pills, cocaine, meth. They'll say, I'll try that. Because when you're young and you're abusing alcohol, you kind of let your guard down. You'll say, I'll try that. I'll take a line of that. I'll pop one of those pills. And that's where the problem begins. So, when you're consuming alcohol, remember all of these things. We're not going to get away from it, but you got to be very mindful of what you're doing. And it basically brings your guard down. And when you're using alcohol, anything can happen. Violent acts happen. Unnecessary things happen at parties. For our youth out there, you know what I'm talking about. We all are community members here. So we have to make sure we stress that message to a friend. Don't ever leave one of your friends alone. Always try to bring them home. Call their parents. Reach out. Don't ever leave anybody behind. Because we matter. You matter. And that's what the message is about today, is that we are here to give a positive message for our youth. Norway House is so beautiful, and we're going to be changing in the next generation. You guys are going to become leaders. You guys are going to become the workforce of Norway House. So how are we going to make that better in the next generation? Is to give you the information to make informed decisions on your future. So we got a long way to go in the presentation, but I really want you to listen. And you know what? Reach out, please. We all need a little bit of assistance in our lives. And I remember growing up in Winnipeg when I was just a little teenager running around. I raised my hand so many times. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here today. And I can tell you that honestly. And I've lost some family members in the last few years to drug overdose and suicide. So it hit home for me. It's right here. And these are our community members that we lost as well. So we can't become normalized. We can't just see these tragedies happening right in front of our eyes and then the next day continue on like nothing has happened. We can't do that. We have to make informed choices of what we're doing because our community needs to get uplifted. And that's going to be on all of us as community members and you youth that are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. So with that, we'll take a couple of minutes and maybe get some water. Corey's doing a fantastic job with the presentation. And I'd like to thank all the staff that are here like we did before. And I'm really impressed with you guys, listening very intently. And if you have questions, don't write them down, pass them to the EAs, the teachers, because we'll talk about those, because I want to get feedback. I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to hear your thoughts on some of these issues that we're talking about. Alcohol, drugs, leads to violence. It leads to a lot of things that hurts our families. And Norway House, we deserve better than that. So we'll continue on with Corey in a couple of minutes. But remember that, write something down. Any question is a good question. So I'm going to actually call on some of the youth to bring some questions forward because you are what matters. And that's why we're here today, is for you and for our community to be better. So we'll take a few more minutes and then Corey will jump right back into it. But anyways, everybody, I'd like to, everybody give Corey a round of applause. Like Corey came here for us. Corey, he cares. Thank you. Corey's a really good man who gives his time and his whole career to help others. And I'm very glad that I got him to come to Norway House before the Christmas holidays. Because sometimes Christmas holidays are tough. But the message is out there that we can do and have a good Christmas if we just make informed choices. And you know what? When you're at a party or you're at somebody's house and you see stuff happening, it's not, no one's going to judge you. Just walk out. Go home, watch a movie, spend time with your family. That's the best things about the Christmas holidays is watching movies or doing something in the community, go skating. There's going to be some events happening in the community for the Christmas break, and let's celebrate who we are as a Cree Nation. It's going to take time. It's one step at a time. So we all can walk together proudly. I don't know how many years I have left on this world, but I'm going to keep trying hard as I can, just like everybody else that's in this room, to make it better for you so you can do better for the next generation. That's how it works. We're all related in this room. We're all family. We're all community members. So make sure that you have some kind of positive message from today. And we're going to have a great lunch that's coming up in about an hour. And so that's what I wanted to talk about when Corey's in his first break. So I will let him continue in a couple of minutes. Thank you. Okay, if somebody can tell our young people in the hallway that we're going to get started again. Getting some good feedback from the audience and some from the staff. It's excellent to hear. We're going to get going. Corey's going to finish off the presentation for the morning. Then we're going to jump right into lunch. And then in the afternoon, we have a couple of interesting things to do. And of course, the $50 gift cards, we have 16 more. So 16 more people will be walking out of here with that. So that's great. Thank you very much. And we'll get going in about 2 minutes. We got some people in Ottawa listening right now. So, and in northern Quebec, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, Northwest Territories, they need this workshop. They need our youth to hear this because our leaders out there got to remember that we matter. You matter. So instead of just focusing on Manitoba, which is great, we want to make sure that this workshop goes to the AFN General Assembly, because this message is so big that we want to make sure that other provinces and other First Nation communities start doing the same projects with their schools, with their communities. This is something that's happening all over Canada. We're not alone. So I want Cindy Woodhouse, the AFN National Chief, to hear this, pass it along to her. We want to be on the General Assembly because this message is so great for our youth. You know, we have over 500,000 youth that are going to be leaders one day, that are going to be stepping all across Canada, and we want to make sure they're prepared. We want to make sure that our youth get this message. We want to make sure that we do the best that we can to set you up for a winning future, not for a future that we're struggling. And that's why we're doing this today. It's all about our community, and it's about everybody that's listening out there. So let's give Cindy a big round of applause and say, let's get us on that national AFN. Let's go. And this is from our youth, our students of Norway House Cree Nation. Cindy Woodhouse, we want to get on a national team for AFN. We've been begging for a few years to do this. This message is so great. Let's make it happen. Thank you very much. I'm going to get Corey to finish his presentation. Hold on a minute. Pardon? Oh, yes, this is being live streamed. Yeah, NHCN, Norway House Cree Nation. Share it, you guys. Send some people, friends in other communities, Cross Lake, Nelson House, wherever. Okay, Norway House Communications. So send it out there, guys. It's live stream. Send it out to your friends, people that you know all over the place. This message has to go out, and I'm very, very proud that we're doing this in Norway House, because Norway House is seen as one of the communities that sets the tone, not only in development, but for the good work our people do. Now we have to make sure that we take care of each other, because how can we make a nation strong if we're struggling with addictions, if we're struggling with alcohol, if we're struggling with violence? We cannot do that. So that's why this thing is so important. So we have healthy people to take those positions tomorrow and make this community even better. And learn from our elders. Learn from the people that care about you. You're going to make the difference tomorrow, and your children will make the difference after that. So thanks again for listening, everybody. Corey's going to step up here. Thank you.
All right. Last section is not quite as long as the opioid section. I'm going to talk about methamphetamine. Something probably all of us have heard about before. And I know some of the isolated communities in our province and our country are being really affected by this drug. A lot of drugs, but methamphetamine is running rampant through a lot of our towns and communities. So pretty interesting, I always say about methamphetamine, it's the polar opposite of the drug we just talked about. So you have your stimulant class of drugs, your cocaines, your methamphetamines, those are stimulants. Your depressing drugs are like opioids, alcohol, cannabis, Xanax, and so forth. So meth is very different, but they discovered amphetamine in about 1893, actually. They think it was a chemist that was playing in his lab, mixed a bunch of chemicals, and kind of went poof, and basically invented amphetamine. When you hear amphetamine or methamphetamine, they're much the same. It's only methamphetamine. Meth gets into the brain quicker than amphetamine does. And something that we don't talk about enough is we widely used it during the World Wars, often in the form of Pervitin. These were meth pills that were given to the soldiers, and they were basically told, keep popping these pills, go off and fight. And I think we all agree war is disgusting. right? I think some of the worst species on the planet are actually humans. I don't understand when we're going to stop hating and killing one another. But who thought you can turn on a TV and actually watch wars happening? There's 2 big wars happening right now. You can turn it on the TV and watch it. And it's gross that we use this, but it kind of made sense because it made the soldiers have lots of energy. They didn't have to eat, sleep, or rest. They'd pop these pills and they just kept marching forward. So what actually returned from the war? We don't talk about that enough, right? What returned from the war when we were aggressively giving them methamphetamine pills? Remember back in the day, they would lock up cough medicine, right? You weren't allowed to go to a pharmacy and buy cough medicine because the pseudoephedrine in that cough medicine was the stimulant they were looking for to cook methamphetamine. That's not an issue anymore. These are not hillbillies making meth off in the woods somewhere, right? I'm a paramedic. I'm not law enforcement, but these are high-level criminal organizations that have criminal scientists working for them. They know what they're doing. They're mixing together very dangerous, serious chemicals, and they're pumping out methamphetamine. And the meth of today is called P2P meth. That's where it's heavy solvent-based. So we're seeing things like acetone, racing fuel, sulfuric acid, battery acid. All of these chemicals are making methamphetamine. And when I talk to their frontline providers, there's a bunch of you here today in the room, the problem with this newer version of methamphetamine is it increases the likelihood of meth-induced psychosis. So the delusions, the hallucinations, the potential for violence is increased enormously. And if anybody's ever seen methamphetamine-induced psychosis, it's incredibly scary. You have to call 911. People that are in this state of psychosis cannot be talked down. I presented with addictions experts and physicians. They can't be talked down. There's certain techniques to try to de-escalate, but you need professional help with these folks. It's very, very scary. They lose their pain sensation. They don't feel pain, and they gain superhuman strength in that meth-induced state. I remember dealing with a little guy some years ago that was using methamphetamine. He was a really little guy. He was not a physical threat to me. He was super chill. He wanted some help. I responded to him. I put him in my ambulance, turned on some music that he wanted, but I could see him changing. I could see him changing from a guy that was very approachable. He was pretty calm. I saw his body language change. I knew he was entering this state. And he flipped to that state. I removed him from my ambulance very quickly. It took 4 police officers, my partner and I, to control him, to pin him down. This little 120-pound guy was throwing us through the air like rag dolls. So if you see somebody like this, you have to remove yourself and you have to call 911, okay? This is an advertisement from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Methamphetamine was not a controlled drug until the 1970s. Not that long ago. I know some of you think that that's 150 years ago. It's not, right? The 70s is not that long ago. So you could literally go out, get a pizza with a side of methamphetamine. I'm being kind of silly. But it was not a controlled drug, so they would market it. They were advertising, typically picking on women back then, to take amphetamines. It gives you more energy, makes you more attractive, slimmer. You can push through life. You'll be more successful. Another one from the 60s. Take Methadone. If you eat too much or if you feel depressed, you're lacking energy, take Methadone. Thankfully, we've evolved where we do not encourage methamphetamine-based drugs anymore, right? Anybody like what they see there? Everybody's saying, oh yeah. Mine's that one. I could live inside of that chocolate cake. I could build a nice chocolate cake house for myself and be very happy. What's interesting, when I put this picture up, a lot of you did something without realizing what you did. I kind of scanned the room, and a lot of you kind of shifted your shoulders. A lot of you kind of sat up, and there was a little bit of giggling and some whispering. And that's a very powerful picture. When I put this up at a huge conference, I often say nothing for about 30 seconds. And I have to take a 5-minute break because people are whispering, giggling, they're shifting their shoulders. The reason why you did that is when you see something you like, you've activated the reward system of your brain. Just by me thinking of living inside of that chocolate cake, I activate the reward system of my brain. That's telling my body you like that. And you released a tiny little bit of dopamine right there. So dopamine is your happy chemical. Serotonin and dopamine are neurotransmitter chemicals. Very, very powerful. That's what methamphetamine targets. It targets the reward system of your brain. It activates the reward system and you release huge amounts of dopamine and serotonin. It's not a treatment, but when we acknowledge, again, the vast majority of substance use are suppressing trauma. It's pushing that trauma to the side, and you can kind of put left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. It's not a treatment, but that's what meth is targeting. Who thinks you try meth once and you're addicted and you're done for life? By show of hands. Couple of hands, that's not true. That was a scare tactic we used to use back in the day. You cannot tell the community if you do meth, you're done for life. That's what we used to tell people. That removes any hope to recover from that drug. You can recover from methamphetamine addiction, but it's brutally difficult. It's brutally difficult. The problem with meth is when you use high amounts of it for a long period of time, your brain stops producing dopamine. It says, I'm just going to take a break. It requires the meth to produce dopamine production. Most extreme case I've seen was a man that was addicted to methamphetamine for a long period of time. They determined his brain could take up to 2 years to reset, to start producing normal levels of dopamine again. And I can tell you, without dopamine production, life does not happen. Life will not occur. You require dopamine. Okay? So we can't tell people that you're done for life. Anybody eat when they're not hungry? Everybody's hand should be going up, right? Mine is the worst one. I talked about my issue with chocolate, right? That's my only vice in life. I eat chocolate. And if I buy that big family-sized chocolate bar, I promise myself I'm only going to have one line of that. And before I know it, I just push the whole thing down my throat. Right? The reason why we celebrate with food as a community, no matter where you are, who you're from, eating feels good. And you actually release dopamine, about 150% increase when we eat. So that's why sometimes when we're depressed or lonely or desperate or sad, we surround ourselves with food. People can cope with food sometimes because you're spiking dopamine. It's very powerful. Video games and social media. This is a big one. There's really big brain people that are studying this. And the concern is with these devices, right? The addiction to these and the addiction to social media means we're constantly doing this. And ask yourself if you're able to put this thing away for an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, a day, 5 days. Ask yourself if you're able to do that. Lots of us can't. And the problem with this thing is they're looking at the youth. And as your brain is growing, so you guys are sitting here, till you're about 25 years old, our brains are developing, they're growing. All of those beautiful neural pathways that are being formed are creating who you are until about age 25 years old. So your character, your core values, the person you are, they think is actually formed at an extremely young age. But that still occurs till you're about 25. And if you're raised on these devices to constantly be hitting dopamine, they're finding that's spiking about 175% increase of dopamine from these. Constantly hitting dopamine. That's not normal. Youth that are growing up that are constantly pinging dopamine from these devices is not human. That's not normal. So I'm not saying if you break your device, you lose it, you're going to go shoot meth. I'm not saying that. But we're raising a generation to falsely expect their dopamine to constantly be hitting, right? When I was young and I wanted to spike my dopamine, I played in the dirt, climbed trees, and I chased girls. That's how I spiked my dopamine, right? So you got to monitor your use. Be very careful, okay? A healthy sex life, right? Like what I tell my son, he's 16, I said, when you have sex when you're 40 to have kids, right? Be very careful. That's about a 200% increase of dopamine, right? And I'm not allowed to put a picture of sex on my screen. right? So this one's interesting, and I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about this, and I'm going to do my best to get through some of these stories. About 5 years ago, my phone rang, and I picked it up, and I said, "Hey, Corey with Paramedics, how can I help you?" And it was a lady, and she said, "Corey, we've heard about your programming, we've heard about your approach. We want you to come and consider working with our women and girls." And I can say for 5 years, I've had the very humble privilege of working with trafficked women and girls in our province. You all know what trafficking is, correct? Okay. I don't get nervous to public speak, but I can tell you, walking into that room for the first day 5 years ago, I was super nervous. I'm going to suggest to you, women and girls that are trafficked in our society are, in my opinion, some of the most traumatized humans on our planet. And I say publicly all of the time, my opinion, some of the worst humans on our planet are the men that are trafficking our women and girls. That's who we need to hold accountable. That's who needs to answer for who these women and girls are. And it doesn't always happen to who you think it's going to happen to. The reason why I call some of them girls is when you're 13, 14, 15 years old, you're still a child. You're not a woman. Like my son. My son's still a boy. He's a young man. He's not a man. He's a young boy. Humanize who these people are. We were working with a girl from Winnipeg that met a man when she was 14 years old, a child. And these guys are very good at what they do. They're dirtbags, but they're good at what they do. What happens is they make her feel popular, attractive, sought after, buys her nice things, gets her the nice shoes, the nice jacket, the nice earrings, starts to invite her to the big boy parties. And cocaine is often the drug that they choose to force these young girls to use. So he brings her out for a few parties, gives her alcohol, makes her feel popular, starts to offer her cocaine. The first few times she says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And by the way, she comes from a beautiful home in an area in Winnipeg where society thinks nothing happens. Both of her parents are present. They loved her. She did not use drugs. She got into the wrong crowd. And he started to offer her cocaine. When she takes a little bit of cocaine, he never charges her for those drugs because he loves her. "I'll never charge you for these drugs." Does that for a number of months, gets her heavily addicted to cocaine, then one day presents to this 14-year-old child a big supply of cocaine. And he says, "You can use half for free, I'll never charge you, but you have to sell the other half for me." He knows she's not going to sell it because she's heavily addicted to that drug. 6 months later, this man approaches this 14-year-old child and says, "I've been giving you cocaine for 6 months. You owe me $60,000 to a 14-year-old child. And I say to every group I present to, if you have 60 grand, I'm in the wrong business. A 14-year-old is not going to have that kind of money, and he knows that. Very typical story. He says you have 3 options. Your first option is you pay your debt and you'll never see me again, and he's probably right. Your second option, if you don't pay me, I'm going to put a bullet through your baby sister's brain. I'm going to kill your sister. Your third option is he pushes her a card with an address to a 14-year-old angel, a child. Go to this address and you can start paying off your debt, you piece of meat. And before you know it, this beautiful 14-year-old child is embedded in that trafficking world, being passed around like a commodity to pay that debt off. And what turns my stomach is every year there's up to 120 girls in our province that has to be run through that program to show compassion, love, to educate, to give them social tools, put their hand on their shoulder and say, tell me what your story is. So when I talk to big cities and big groups, if you pass somebody on the street, imagine if you passed her and you look at her and you say, you bum, get a job, you piece of crap. What is their story? You find out what their story is. We have to go after the men that are doing this. The girls and women that are embedded in that trafficking world are loved. Their families are looking for them desperately. My time out in Vancouver, the downtown east side is a very shocking, humbling place. The number of parents running around with their big fancy suits, as Gilbert and I saw last year, was humbling. They're running around those back lanes trying to find their kids. And some of them are wearing their $2,500 suits and they're trying to find their kid. So I always say, as I say to my son, I'm going to treat you like you're my son. The responsibility you have, all of you, but what I tell my boy, you're a man, a young man. Your duty and responsibility is to watch out for your friends. If you're at a party, you're at a place and you see things happening, if your spidey senses are tingling, something doesn't feel right, get the hell out of there. That's where you have an opportunity to put your hand on your friend, your peer's back and say, we're leaving. The men that are doing this are very good at what they do. They know how to get you to take that bait. Look out for each other. So your responsibility is to take care of one another. Get yourself out of there. That girl today is doing better. She's one of the sort of a mentor supervisor for the group that we work with. And I usually don't go this far with my stories. What happened to her some years later, she wanted to get out of that trafficking world. She got out of it, she ran away. What happened was these guys found out where she was. She was jumped, stabbed in the neck with a needle full of methamphetamine. And what they did to her so she couldn't run away again. They took a hammer and they smashed her feet so she couldn't run away. You'll never get away from me. And they smashed her feet with a hammer. That's what happens in our world. It's up to you to reset that clock. And what I say to everybody, the changes you can impact for your entire bloodline is enormously powerful. Enormously powerful. My generation, it's often too late. You're the generation that can correct some of the demand for these drugs. You're the generation that can show compassion. You're the ones that can put your hand on your friend's shoulder or a community member's shoulder and say, I'm here for you. Tell me what your story is. Cocaine, very popular drug. You get about a 450% increase in dopamine. It's very powerful. A lot of professionals are snorting cocaine. They say, I would never do meth because that's a dirty street drug. Really? If you're doing cocaine, you're intaking methamphetamine. Federal drug testing has shown that. Meth is coke, coke is meth. When I present at some big professional conferences, there's some people sitting there with big eyes. There's some people that think I can control my cocaine or meth use to just Friday nights to push me through the weekend. Good luck with that. What we start seeing is they just do Fridays. Then you know what? Mondays are kind of tough. I'm just going to use on Fridays and Mondays. You know what? Wednesdays are kind of hard. I'm just going to do Friday, Monday, Wednesday. And before you know it, they're in that cycle of methamphetamine use. Methamphetamine, what do you think it gives you for a dopamine release if cocaine is 450? Throw out some numbers. What do you think? 700, 600? About 800%? Okay. How about 1,300%? So the problem with the methamphetamine of today is it's releasing that in human amounts of dopamine and serotonin. The interesting thing about meth is the first few times you try it, it's humanly impossible to ever get that high again on methamphetamine. That's what's unique to meth. Even if I'm a heavy methamphetamine user and I stop for 5 years, you'll never get that high again. So you start chasing that high, you chase that dragon's tail, and you cannot get to that point again. It's a very scary drug. The opioids can kill you very quickly. Methamphetamine could eventually, it just takes longer. Okay? Most folks can inject it with needles, right? The people we encounter, sometimes they start with swallowing, smoking. Most of them turn to the needle very, very quickly. I've been into the treatment centers, the jails, the halfway houses, and most people that use meth are saying, I turn to the needle really, really quickly. Okay? That's kind of what it looks like. I was giving a drug presentation in Winnipeg about a month or two ago, and a lady approached me with a little dime bag. You all know what dime bags are, right? Yeah, the little miniature Ziploc bags that are for drugs. And she gave me a dime bag with a bunch of methamphetamine in it. And she said, I was on the bus today and a bunch of kids found it on the floor and they were kind of poking it and looking at it, so she gave it to me. Most of the meth that we're seeing kind of looks like these two right here, right? There's a thought if your meth looks pretty like the blue stuff, it must be healthier for you. Meth is meth is meth. It doesn't matter what it looks like, right? Most of you, none of you, are going to go home after a long day of listening to me yap for 2 hours. You're not going to go home and pour yourself a big glass of battery acid, right, and drink that. That's what meth is. They often start with sulfuric acid, different acids and solvents in a big mixing vat, and they start mixing up these chemicals. And it's not a hillbilly off in the bushes, like I said today earlier. These are industrial laboratories that are pumping out train cars of methamphetamine. Okay? So please don't base your meth decisions on what it looks like. What you're doing, again, if we acknowledge that the vast majority of trauma or addiction is suppressing some of your realities, you're pushing that away. Methamphetamine comes along, euphoria, dysphoria, self-confidence, alertness, social ability. It suppresses that reality. It does not treat it. Right? Overdose or prolonged use. My last time in Vancouver, I was there about 3 weeks ago, I guess. And I walked down one of these back alleys in the downtown east side, and there was a boy about 15 years old. Couldn't have been older than 15. He was by himself sitting in this back lane with a syringe of methamphetamine. And we walked by him. And he was violently shaking, trying to inject his neck with this methamphetamine. About a 15-year-old boy. That boy is dead today. And what I saw was end-stage methamphetamine use with him. His whole body was oozing fluid. That's end-stage meth use, where you inject those chemicals, you swallow those chemicals, you start to dissolve your body from the inside out. Your circulatory system can only take so much solvent before it starts to quite literally just dissolve. So that young boy was oozing fluid, and he died by himself. And I guarantee you, as some of my street connection buddies there say, his parents were probably running rampantly through that neighborhood trying to find their boy. Way too many people are dying alone. People that are trafficked, homeless, missing. Their family is looking for them. They love them. They want them back in their community. Okay? What happens? I'm only going to talk about the rush stage of methamphetamine. Because in my opinion, we hear about methamphetamine too much, of you're high for days or hours. We focus on that too much. That rush of dopamine I talked about is only about 30 minutes long, and then you start coming down fairly quickly. The thing with meth is you could be high in 6, 10, 12, or 18 hours, but you're never high enough. The focus on acute methamphetamine users is to get back to that point. And they can't, so they start to binge that drug. They start to take large amounts of methamphetamine. Some of the girls that I've worked with in the trafficking program that I work with, they were using 8, 10, 20 points of meth a day. That would kill me instantly, right? What's happening with methamphetamine is your internal body temperature and your heart rate can be so incredibly high that can sometimes be enough to kill you from huge amounts of methamphetamine, okay? Some of the care we provide, there's an antipsychotic medication we can give our patients, but there's no antidote. People in my travels in the country still say, just give them the antidote. There is no antidote for methamphetamine. There's no direct treatment for it. We treat the symptoms of methamphetamine. And sometimes when we chemically sedate patients, paramedics in Winnipeg, Our advanced care paramedics go to school for about 4 years. We can do a lot of skill sets in the city. Chemical sedation is something that we do for these patients. If they're in that meth-induced psychosis state, they can't be talked down. So we'll often concoct 2 very strong drugs together and we'll just chemically sedate these people. There's no other line of defense for them. Okay? The answer when people say, just send them to detox, just send them to detox, not the answer. That's maybe where we have to start, but folks affected by addiction, especially methamphetamine, need long-term compassionate care. And what I always say publicly is what we have to start doing is we have to offer culturally appropriate care. We can't expect everybody to fit into Western medicine. We have to offer that cultural piece, right? What I'm going to suggest, and it's not my place to suggest this, but what I know is a massive success is when we look at land-based care. A lot of very beautiful people will benefit from that. We have to look to embed different treatment options. It shouldn't just be medevacing everybody down to the big city of Winnipeg, where a lot of your community members are being lost. They don't always return home. And Gilbert and I talk about that. Okay? Some of the challenges we have, it's super hard when we see repeat clients. You'll never hear me talk about poor me. Our paramedics are so busy. They are busy. In Winnipeg, we did 122,000 calls last year, just for the city of Winnipeg. The paramedics in Winnipeg are outrageously busy. But what's hard, and I've been that paramedic that I've stood in front of a parent and they pound me on my chest, screaming at me, asking for help. I'm perfectly fine with taking that. I'm willing to absorb some of that energy. But it's hard when the system is not there to support them like they need. You've got some awesome community leaders sitting right over here. And they know what I'm saying is if you come for help and they say, come back in 2 months, there's no beds. We have no room. Come back in 6 weeks. Or do you have $100,000 to fly off to the mountains for your help? The system has to be able to step up immediately when you ask for help. The system has to be there immediately to help that person. Okay? Who thinks, again, I'm going to pick on my buddies here. If these guys leave today and they have some drugs on them, and my buddy wearing the black checkered sweater becomes unconscious, and his buddy calls 911, paramedics arrive maybe with the police, and they see they have drugs on them. Can the police arrest them for drug possession? What do we think? A bunch of you are saying, yeah, they can. Some of you are saying, no. You cannot be arrested for drug possession if you have drugs on you and you call 911 to save a life. In 2018, the federal government passed a law, the Good Samaritan Drug Overdose Law Act, that protects you from criminal charges if you call 911 to save a life. The reason why that happened is if we're best friends, and I become unconscious, they were bailing on my ass because they didn't want to get in trouble. I saw it way too often. Young people left to die because they didn't want to get in trouble. So they corrected that. That treats addiction and social issues from a health lens, not an enforcement lens. Just because somebody is using drugs or alcohol does not automatically mean they're a criminal or a horrible person. You got to treat it like from a health lens, right? So don't hesitate. Don't wait to call 911. You cannot be criminally arrested for those drugs. Spread that word. That's a law that was not publicly pushed out to the community nearly enough. And you're the group that needs to hear that message. Okay? These are some of the incidents that we see in Winnipeg. We do about 15,000 substance use calls a year in Winnipeg. And like Gilbert said, the biggest offender is definitely alcohol. Absolutely alcohol. Alcohol is a tough one because it's socially normalized, it's socially acceptable, professional sports teams sponsor with it. So we think it's just a normal, okay substance, but it causes the most societal hurt out there for sure. Okay? Pretty shocking slide. In Winnipeg in 2013, we used to have 15 methamphetamine patients a month. We now have over 250 a month that are presenting to our hospitals, sometimes through us. That's 250 individuals, not incidents. That's a huge increase. That's just in Winnipeg. If we included all the communities in rural Manitoba and northern Manitoba, that number would be staggering. Staggering high. Okay? Some of the drug testing results from the feds. 21% of fentanyl has methamphetamine. 43% of tested fentanyl is in the form of fake oxys. So oxy is typically green. They sometimes call them greenies because they're green. The criminal element will pump out fake oxys, and they're often fentanyl. Oxy is a pretty low-level opioid when we compare it to fentanyl. So if I'm used to getting my oxy, I get one of these counterfeit pills that are fentanyl, my body's not used to that. That could be enough to kill me. Okay? So my biggest hope with coming out here today is that you learn. You take the education to heart. You share it with your families. I was approached by a couple of awesome students that said, I'm learning and I'm going to share this with my family. I have to keep my dad safe. I have to keep my mom safe. I got to help my community stay safe. That's what I love hearing. Right? Gilbert has always told me from day one. He says, Corey, this is about throwing 1 million seeds out there. And you know some of them will flourish. Some of them will grow. That's a victory. So when we look at these big issues, I encourage you to don't try and solve every global issue. You have to take small bites. And you celebrate those small victories that we know are out there, and you celebrate that. Many small victories equal big victories. Right? And the people that have approached me today, one in particular, is a good victory to me. I could feel the compassion. I felt that maturity coming to ask a question, to tell me a little bit of their story. That's a huge win. And what happens when you're in a front line role like this, I told you, when I started this 24 years ago, I was going to save the world, right? I'm going to save the world. And your tank of compassion gets challenged. Teachers are the same. Community workers are the same. Nurses, doctors. Your compassion gets challenged throughout your career. You have to ask yourself, why did you get into this business to start with? And what happened to me a number of years ago was my professional humbling moment. I always end with this story. At the end of my street career, I was not happy with the person that I was. My tank of compassion was quite empty. I started doing this at an age I had no business starting this. I was 19 years old. Things are very different now. A 19-year-old should not be starting a career as a paramedic. I was not mentally mature enough. My brain was still developing, right? Like I talked about before, until you're about 25 years old. So I actually resent the fact that I started doing this at 19 years old. I actually resent that fact. It forced me to grow up overnight. And I was doing things that I shouldn't be doing when I'm 19, 20, 21 years old. But at the end of my street career, I was going to do a couple of things. I was going to quit because I was burned out after that many years as a street paramedic. And one guy in particular that we dealt with all of the time challenged that tank of my compassion. I hated him. He was pissing me off. I told him to stop calling 911. You're just making me angry. You're making me late to get home. You're making me late to get out to my cottage on the weekend. Very first world problem, right? Everybody failed him. Every system failed him. We failed him, police, social services, the hospital. Everybody failed him. And he was a homeless man that lived on the strip in Winnipeg. But something was off with him. He didn't fit that mold. I knew that. He didn't fit. Something was off. He's a guy we take to the hospital, and he put his mouth beneath the hand sanitizer station, and he'd fill his mouth full, and he'd swallow that. hand sanitizer. Anything he could input into his body, and nobody ever, like I said before, nobody put their hand on his shoulder and said, I'm here for you. Tell me what your story is. What got you to this point? Nobody asked him. He's the guy that would stand on the street corner and people would drive by and throw garbage in his face. They would swear at him. They would remind him, you're a worthless human being. And I remember this guy looked at me one day and he said, you know what? I'm completely destroyed as it is. Yet all of you remind me I'm a worthless human being. I'm well aware. I feel like I'm a worthless human being. We finally put this guy's story together. The reason why he didn't fit was he was a very wealthy, successful businessman from another big city in Canada. Beautiful family, the big house, the big career, very successful. He went off to work one day and his phone rang. And on the other end of the phone was a voice. And the voice said, you have to come to the hospital. Your 2 kids and wife were just killed in a devastating car accident. And yet society reminds him, you're a bag of garbage. You're a worthless human being because look at you. You're dirty. You drink alcohol. You use drugs. Look at you. They demean him. They beat him down every chance that they get. Not one person said, what's your story? Every system failed him. So I remind you again, if you see people in your community, people you care about, somebody you don't know, what is their story? Support. It's like if you find out that I'm diagnosed with cancer today, right? Knock on wood. You're going to support me. You're going to feel bad for me. You're going to cry with me. You're going to hug me. You're going to send me terrible casseroles, right? Send me cards. You're going to phone me. You're going to support me. Because that poor guy, if you find out I'm addicted to drugs or alcohol or I have mental health issues, we often push people to the side and we step over them. That's what stigma is. Stigma says anybody that copes with drugs or alcohol is a bad human. No, they're likely suppressing trauma. Okay? So I'm going to say I want to thank you. I love the fact that I look at 99% of you are looking right at me listening. And I really, really appreciate that. I hope you take some education back with you. You can approach me after one-on-one if you're scared to ask a question. In front of the group, Gilbert and I already have a whole bunch of questions. Spread the word, spread the knowledge, and I hope you walk away with some more tools anyway. Thanks for your time. Okay?
Great presentation, Corey, as always. Okay, Corey and one of our great frontline workers that we have in the community, Flora has been a frontline worker and a medical person in her whole career in Norway House. So they're going to talk, her and Corey are going to talk about the kits, the naloxone kits, the needles, and the sprays. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to jump right into some more draws, and then it'll be lunchtime. So let's listen to what Corey and Flora are going to say, because we're trying to get Norway House Cremation to be the naloxone hub, the distributor of these life-saving antidotes. So I will let Corey and Flora take it away for a couple more minutes.
Okay, so just before lunch, like Gilbert said, I've brought a couple of different kits with me today. There's the injectable form of naloxone, which is often provided through the province for free. Gilbert and I and a lot of the other folks here, like Gilbert said, we want Norway House to be a distribution hub for this medication. The other one is a nasal kit form. So the one you have to draw the medication up with a syringe, you inject somebody in a large muscle group, the side of your shoulder, like where you get your flu shots, could be somebody's thigh, somebody's butt muscle. The other one is a nasal form, and that's a nasal plunger that you insert up somebody's nostril and you push all of the plunger down. I already talked about what the medication is today. These don't require certification. They don't require training. There's lots of people here, so what I want you to do is come up maybe before you go for lunch, during the lunch break, and come and look at these kits. We can get a little more personal with you and show you how you actually use them. The injectable kit is likely what you'll see. There's 4 needles and 4 vials of that medication. Each vial is 1 dose. So you withdraw that entire vial of medication in 1 syringe, and you inject that person with 1 dose. That dose can be repeated every 3 to 5 minutes. Naloxone is a benign medication, like I said before. You can't hurt anybody with that medication. Okay? I'm going to leave you with a couple of kits, and I know there's an appetite to have these in our community. You guys can really be the first responders. The problem is when somebody's unconscious and they stop breathing, every minute that goes by, you have a 10% less chance of living. And if you're like Winnipeg, you're not going to have a paramedic or a healthcare provider at your side within 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 minutes. So 10 minutes goes by after I hit the floor, I have a 100% chance of not surviving. So we want naloxone to be out there. We want you to have access to it. Okay? Do you want me to do more of a demo?
Yeah, let's see.
As Corey was stating, these kits, we are working on getting a distribution area in our community because the health division was one site, but they've moved to the health center, the new health center, and then the other distribution area would be the pharmacy where kits would be available, and we're going to identify the second and make more awareness to the community of getting access to these kits. It's important. One of the things I know that some parents, I don't know if you guys recall, but there was a death in our community back in April. And we got numerous calls from parents and guardians, grandparents, asking, where can I get this kit? Because there's a possibility that my son could have survived. So that hit home for us. And it's important when these kits are taken and kept at home, knowing, especially for parents and grandparents that know that their kids are using drugs or family member is using drugs, that these kits are available at home when they return. Because that's one of the things, one of the other parents mentioned. Same situation that night. It's unfortunate that one of the young person or young adults had passed, where the other friend that was involved in what they were doing had headed home, and she just, the mom was so, didn't know what to do. She did use some traditional meds and kept her son aware for him not to fall asleep, and she finally persuaded him to go into the hospital to seek treatment. He was very, very lucky to survive. So yes, when these kids are at home, it's important too that everybody, that the kids, younger kids are not accessing them or playing with them. They are not to play with. They are there to save lives. If you know that your child or your family members using drugs, so to make sure that they're kept safe too, and that people know where they are and how to access them.
Yep. Maybe Corey talked a little bit about the doses of naloxone. We can continue this when somebody doesn't respond to it.
For sure. So what you'll see, so the injectable form, like I said, has 4 vials. We don't want to overcomplicate it. So each dose in the injectable form is 0.4 milligrams. Don't worry about it. It's 1 whole vial is drawn up and you administer that entire dose. That can be repeated every kind of 3 to 5 minutes. Don't be overly worried about time. If you don't see that community member or loved one improving, give them a repeat dose. I can tell you in Winnipeg, I've seen people that have been dosed 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 times. And that speaks to the incoming drug supply is that deadly. It's We're finding naloxone-resistant opioids out there. Some of those criminal analogs that I talked about might require frequent dosing just to combat some of that opioid that is in their system. So remember what this stuff does. It competes with that opioid. It tries to remove it from that receptor site, kind of has a bit of a fist fight with it, and it should allow that patient to start breathing again. So redose every 3 to 5 minutes. The nasal kit is a huge dose. It's 4 milligrams per plunger kit, and you administer that entire dose up somebody's nose. The biggest thing you can do with the nasal kit is make sure they're flat on their back with their airway slightly open, right? This is a liquid that you're injecting up their nose, so you want gravity to be on your side. You want it to drain to the back of that nasal cavity. Also, when you flip somebody's airway up, you're actually improving their airway. A lot of unconscious patients, they sound like they're snoring. They have really sort of severe effort to their breathing. By simply lifting their chin up, you can get rid of that snoring. Don't be scared about repeat dosing. The healthcare professionals are looking at more appropriate pre-hospital dosing. I don't want to wake my patients up fully. We have lots of tools we can use. Your goal is to wake that person up completely. Don't be scared to give repeat doses. I said before, you could add it to the water supply, you would never know. Some people say, I'm scared to give medication. What if I hurt them? You can't hurt them. If there's no opioid in their system, it just goes away. Okay?
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to have 4 more names drawn before lunch. And what Corey and Flora said, come and take a peek. That way you have a better understanding of what we're going to be distributing within the community. And make sure that you got that information and share it with family and friends. Because, you know, we cannot afford to lose another youth, another person in the community because of these drug misuse and ODs. We have to make sure that we put an end to that, and how we're doing that is starting with you today.
Good afternoon. My name is Gwen Apitegan. I work at NHCN as a children in care counselor. And I've been working in the social field for the past 27 years. I worked at Health Division for 10 years, and then I moved to NHCN in 2006. I've seen a lot of things happen while I've been working. A lot of bad things and a lot of good things. The good things I saw today was the patience and the understanding of all of you. For the lunch being late, for that I apologize, but sometimes things happen, and it's our attitude that makes things change for us. Today my presentation is on understanding the wounded soul. And in this past year alone, we suffered many losses because of drugs, because of alcohol, and just because people are hurting. When people hurt, they want to numb out. They want to escape. They don't want to face the reality of where they are. And sometimes that's why we're so busy looking at that device in our hands, because we don't want to be here. We don't want to be in the present. We want to be somewhere else other than where we are. And as I'm presenting this, I hope that you will pay close attention, because my presentation is about trying to help others. So the question we should be asking others is, what happened to you? Not, what's wrong with you? How come you're always messing up? Smarten up already. Those are the voices we hear sometimes. The way to change hurting behaviors is to change the way you look at what happened to you or to others. We don't know the story of this person sitting next to us. We don't know. Maybe the parents yelled at him, or her before they came to school this morning. Maybe there was no food in the house before they came to school. Maybe they were beaten up by their friends last night. We don't know. So when trauma happens to us, it happens in the body and in the mind, psychologically and physiologically. Psychologically, which means that mental, emotional, and spiritual, it disrupts the way we look at things, our perceptions. Sometimes the way we think gets so distorted because something that happened to us, we make it become us. We can't separate the event from what happened to us. We become like a walking billboard from what we went through, when in reality, it doesn't make us. It should make us stronger because we went through it. We're still going to school. We're still going to work. Overwhelmed with despair, hopelessness, and fear. Because we don't seek that help, we don't seek that person to talk to, we get lost with what we're feeling, with what we're thinking. And it's always mostly negative. Because the situation that we went through can be so dramatic. And then we start judging ourselves, condemning ourselves, thinking, nobody's going to want to hang out with me. I'm not good enough. So we walk around with our heads down. We don't want to be in school. We don't want to be in the mall. We don't want to be around people. Panic attacks. How many of you have panic attacks? Why? Because there's so much stuff happening around us. And that we have no sense of control sometimes with what's going on around us. But what we have control over is our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviors. And when you know that, you can start focusing on that. If you have problems in your life, seek a counselor in your school. It's best not to talk to a friend. Why is that? Because you can overwhelm that friend. That friend is probably the same age as you, and they can't handle that kind of pressure, that kind of information. But you can ask that friend to go with you to get help. Depression. Some people go into a depression because they have that sense of hopelessness. Nothing's going to change. Nobody's going to help. So we don't even seek that help. Suicidal. How many of our friends, our families, have we lost to suicide because they felt depressed, they felt hopeless? That's why it's so important to reach out. There's always hope. Once you begin talking, once you begin sharing with what happened to you, it's like you're sharing some of that heavy stuff with somebody, and your load becomes lighter. Physiological, that's your body. The impact in the physical responses is deeply felt. You get tired. You'll want to sleep lots. You'll want to isolate. There's lack of energy or too much energy. You always want to move around or you don't want to move. When I go through something, I want to clean up. I want to get rid of this feeling from me, this bad feeling. So I walk or I clean up or I do something else. Tension. Your body can get tensed up, and that's not good. Because when you get tensed up, you get stressed. And when your body gets stressed, you can get sicknesses. Where do you think cancer comes from? Diabetes, heart attacks. All these sicknesses come from going through unresolved trauma. When you don't talk about the stuff that's happening to you, the bad stuff. Body pain. All of a sudden you're feeling a pain in your arm and you can't move it. That happened to me because I was going through so much stuff in my life. And then I got diagnosed with, I can't even pronounce it, but I didn't receive it. So I kept moving and that pain left. Cutting. There's a lot of young people cutting because they want to feel the physical pain instead of the emotional pain. Instead of cutting, talk to somebody. Talk to an adult. Remember that trauma is present in the body. The infant feels it, so they cry and cry and cry. The child lives it. Our young children are living it. The youth, they try to escape it using drugs, using alcohol, even as young as 9 years old. And the adult is still escaping or trying to heal. At first, childhood experiences. When I was a child, I grew up in a home with alcohol. I was neglected. Like nobody cared what I wore to school, whether I had lunch or not. But I took myself to school. Abandonment. We were mostly home every day by ourselves. Nobody was there to supervise us. Nobody was there to keep us. Nobody was there to tell us, no, you can't do that. Come on, it's time for bed. Nobody was there. Abuse. A lot of our people are going through a lot of abuses. Sexual, emotional, physical, and mental. I went through physical abuse in my home. I went through mental abuse because I was called stupid. No matter how good I was in school, I still believed I was stupid. I didn't try to get a job because I thought I was stupid. See, those name callings, they really do a number on our children. Be kind. Be kind to one another. Domestic violence. I seen that big time in my home where adults were fighting, punching each other out. And today I see it in our community. Our youths are attacking each other in the mall. For what? Why? Chemical addictions. We heard about that this morning. There's so much of that in Norway House. Why? Why is there so much chemical addictions? Because there's so much trauma. Our community had 2 residential schools in Norway House. And our parents, our grandparents were in that school. Were they given hugs during the day? Were they told, I love you by somebody? No. They were ripped away from their parents and taken into this institution that they called residential schools. And then I remember this one individual that told me that he was able to look at his house, and it was just across the road, and he was not allowed to go home. And he stayed in that residential school for many years. The question sometimes parents ask about their children is, why is she or he not stopping? Why? Because when you're, okay, this is your brain. Just imagine this is your brain. This is where, this part, this is where you reason. This is where you reason, and this is where you feel. So when a person is not stopping, they're always here. They're in the feeling part. And when they're in the feeling part, they can't think because they're so caught up with their emotions. They're feeling that pain. They're feeling that sense of hopelessness, that sense of helplessness, that powerlessness. And then the addiction takes over. Harm reduction should be considered. Don't expect immediate sobriety. Some of us want our loved ones to stop right away. Why can't you stop? Just stop. But the addiction is so strong. So we need another solution. This picture, the window of tolerance, that's a comfort zone. This is where we feel okay. I can handle this, I got this, no worries, I'm okay. But then something happens. Something bad happens. Take example for lunch. Our lunch didn't get here. And I was out of my comfort zone because I was worried about feeding you all. But then the cook was going through the same thing. It's the same thing. She was going through a crisis. And so I got into the hyper-arousal state where I was anxious and I felt high energy. I wanted to flee because I had to feed you all your people and there was no food. But you know, that's only a simple one I'm giving you. Just recently, I've been going through so many losses. I lost a niece, I lost a sister-in-law, and just recently a son-in-law. So when that happens, you want to shut down. You want to withdraw. And the best thing that you can do is to get closer to family. Feel that connection. Friends that are there to support you. Get closer to them. The long-term impact of trauma. I'm going to skip that one. So this is the brain. And this is what I was telling you about. The prefrontal cortex, this is where your thinking brain is. This is your logical brain. This is where you learn. When you go to school, this is the part you use in class. And then amygdala is your feeling. That's your feeling brain. And that's where sometimes people get stuck. They don't move on. And they're stuck there. Okay, there's two brains here. You can see there's a healthy brain and a diseased brain. This brain over here is the brain of a cocaine addict. And you were told this morning that your brain develops right up to 25 years old. So it's still developing as a youth. Right now, your brain is still developing. So if you're using cocaine, weed, whatever drug, even cigarettes, they can do some damage to your brain. If we feel safe with somebody, we'll open that door to begin the talking. I was an addict for many years before I became a worker. And the only way I could stop was to tell my story. Not my parents' story, not my husband's story, my story. And I had to tell it in truth. And I had to come before the clients I worked with to tell them what happened to me, what really happened to Gwen. Why was Gwen using alcohol to numb the pain? So I told my story. And after I told my story, I sobered up. But I kept falling. And it takes a lot of courage to begin walking again once you fall. But if you really want that clean, sober life, you can do it. This is for somebody that wants to be a helper. If you see yourself to be a helper to somebody, whether it's going to be your sister, brother, friend, or parent, provide safety and acceptance. Provide that love. Don't look at the behavior. Look at the human being. Because if you look at the behavior, you're going to judge. Make him or her feel welcome. Remember, you may be this person's last hope. Be empathetic. Walk a mile in his moccasins. Be curious. Don't judge. What happened to you? Oops. Focus on the person, on what they need. Be a compassionate witness. Be there for them. Don't offer solutions. Just be there. Connect from the heart. Be genuine. Don't ask alarming questions. Speak their language and watch body language and voice intonation. Okay, always acknowledge every effort a person makes. Thank you for reaching out to me. I'm here for you. Whenever, wherever. Affirm his or her feelings. I can understand why you're feeling like that. Always come from the best part of you. Always. Encourage him or her to continue the good work. Highlight strengths and resilience. You know, some people, continue going no matter what they're going through at home. Acknowledge that in them. Help them experience hope for a better future and remind them that they are not alone. Let's provide safety, connection, and coping strategies and start helping in changing lives. How do you do that? Hello, smile, connect with others. Be a compassionate witness. The trauma lives in some people. Don't judge, accept. I could say thank you.
Thank you, Gwen, for that powerful presentation. I want to ask everybody out there, we only got about an hour left. I really appreciate all the people that are paying attention. What's the one theme that you're hearing during the morning and the afternoon? We heard about a journey. We heard about walking. What do you take from what you've heard so far? Has anybody got a guess to put up your hand and maybe make a stab at it? Awareness, maybe? Go ahead.
Where?
I didn't hear what he said. What did he say, that young man there?
Drugs. To motivate people not to do drugs.
To motivate you not to do drugs. That's a very good response. And that is part of it. You know, for everybody that's here, we have youth, we have adults, we have older people from the community. But there's one theme that we're all kind of dealing with and looking at is making that first step, making that choice of wanting to do something about what's happening with you or within your family unit, and how the journey is together with people. Hold on, there's another one here.
Yep. You want to say?
Yeah. Yeah, please. You know, all the responses are really good, and we want to hear as much as we can. Go ahead. It's time for a little bit of feedback from everybody. I know we've listened a lot, and I know that we've taken in a lot of information.
Okay, go ahead.
The experiences.
The experiences. Yeah, that's a good response as well. Like the experiences of, like, you guys are very young. You're just in the youth stage. You're going to school, becoming adults. And a lot of this information is going to resonate with you in one way or the other. Somebody's going to take a little piece of this morning, a little piece of this afternoon, and it'll make a difference. Anybody else want to say a couple of comments before we continue? Oh, right here, Lucy.
Huh. I like how your presentation validates a lot of people's traumas and just the experiences collectively as a community, that it is messed up sometimes. And, you know, we have things to do and we have people to keep going. And there's a reason to keep going. And, you know, like, it really validates that. And I like this presentation, especially for young people.
Yeah, fantastic. Let's give everybody a round of applause. That's for you guys.
Thank you.
I love to hear that. And to me, that validates exactly what you're listening to, what you're taking in as individuals. There's a lot of peer pressure out there. There's a lot of people that won't do anything unless their friend is doing it, and vice versa. But as individuals, we all have to make that choice of what we want to do. The choice that you make today will affect you tomorrow. And like I said earlier in the morning, you guys are the future. You guys are the young people that are going to be running the community in 5, 10, 20 years, working, decision making, becoming lawyers, doctors, maybe even running the chief and council system. Whatever you decide to do in your journey, it's up to you. You can do anything you want to do in your life, but you have to do it in a way where you make decisions for a healthier today, so you can have a healthier and productive tomorrow. Anybody else want to make a statement about what they heard, how it affected you in a way? Anybody here in the front row? No? I heard a lot of chatter there, but nothing to say? No? Okay. All right, so we're going to call up Grant Cuesca-Capo. We're going to call up Leonard Duncan. We're going to call up Joni Muswagon. We're going to call up Sarah. I wish I knew how to pronounce that name, but I get tongue-tied every time I have to say it. And then we're going to get some feedback. And April Osborne, we'd like to get everybody to come up that I talked to. I just said your name, come on up, and we're going to do a little bit of hearing what our frontline workers do, what they do for the community and what they're doing for you today, and some of their experience of what they've heard today and what their program's all about. About 20 years ago, I was struggling with alcohol, drugs, and the people that are here at the NADAP workers helped me a lot, helped me get through it. And their input and their compassion has made me turn my life around and accomplished a lot of things in my life. So I'd like to thank them very much. So we're going to get these people here to speak, and I'd like for everybody to listen for the last segment, please, because this is very important. These are crucial people that are doing the frontline work in our community. Okay, we'll start at the end. If we can pass the mic over, and I'm going to let them take it over. Thanks, guys.
Good afternoon. My name is April Osborne. I work at the Health and Wellness for about going on 4 years now. It's been a different experience for me. I was working at the Jean Foster Women's Shelter, where I seen family violence and domestic violence in our community, not only in our community, but other surrounding communities too. Because sometimes, like what Gwen was saying, those depression does hit, and you feel alone and you don't know who to talk to, that you don't know where to go. It's good to have that one safe person to talk to. You feel like you're alone. Nobody understands you. Nobody knows how you are. Especially when you're a teenager, like your parents, you might think they're always mad or something like that, but they do care. They do love you. And you don't have to. I get that because I'm a parent too, and my kids, oh, chill out, or you're always mad when you talk, and I don't see that because I care. I just care. I tell them that I love them and I care about how they are. The thing too is being as a parent too, it's scary to know when your kids are out and hanging out with their friends, and we don't know what they're doing and what can happen. You might be like, oh, I'm gonna try this, and then, oh, that was good, I'll come and do it again later or something like that. But that don't make it a habit. Try not to, like some people, like I can remember when Corey was saying, like back in the day, you're just like, oh, get high, and then it was fun because you thought you were cool hanging around with your friends and stuff like that. But after all, it gets boring. You don't need it. You start thinking about your education and stuff like that too, and what you want to be when you grow up, when you start having your own family, your own kids and stuff like that. I also do skirt sessions at we moved to the new center, so it's gonna take a while to start adjusting again. But yeah, like, you know, I like to do a lot of stuff, outdoor stuff, and land-based, like making fires, going snowshoeing, camping, all that stuff too, to have that peaceful for myself and for other people to get grounded and start knowing there's other stuff for you to do instead of hanging out, getting into trouble, and you know, because you guys are gonna be leading Norway House one day. You are gonna be helping other community members too. You know, I used to be sitting there listening to other people saying the same stuff too, and I thought, what are they talking about? But yeah, once you find that what you love to do the best, you know, keep on going. And again, I work at the Community Health and Wellness, and we do programming, we do healthy living, we do anger management, we do unhealthy and healthy relationships. We do talk about addictions and stuff like that. So come on down, come and check it out. I think we're having an open house Thursday. So come on down and check it out. I'm glad to see everybody here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Matsukukanep, and I work as a wellness worker for so many years, 37 years. I'm 74 years old, and when I first started working, I worked with late Margaret Balfour as an ADAP, and Albert Ross was my supervisor. And it was, in that time, we didn't deal with too much with drugs, but we did deal with alcohol and the sniffing in our community. But you know, as the community got together, we were able to help the sniffers. We referred our clients to the treatment center at St. Albert's. And our job is not a very easy job, because we had to learn to be an open mind. We are a very caring people because we dealing with a lot of issues with our community because of the addiction that's going on in our family. You know, we have to really start believing in ourselves and say, I want to get better. I know living with an alcoholic and a drug addict, our life becomes so unmanageable. We tend to enabling our drug users. We feel sorry for them. We hide them. We're afraid to contact somebody to help us. Believe me, there is help for you. That's where I really encourage a lot of young people not to be afraid to ask for help. That doesn't mean you don't love your parents or you don't love your siblings. We always gonna love them, but we need to start taking care of ourselves. If we don't take care of ourselves, we will not gonna have a healthy life. We're going to always be angry, always get lonely. And I know the fact is a lot of young girls or even boys are carrying that shame because a lot of us are being a victim of sexual abuse. We're the victims of domestic violence. We're the victims of seeing our parents fighting. We're the victims of seeing our friends get killed. And it's so sad. This is what's happening in our community. It really, really hurts, because it's not only affecting, it affects the whole community in our reserve. And you know, we refer our clients to treatment center, but the best treatment center you could have is in your own community, to be there able to say, I need help. It's all it needs to take. I need help. You're going to have to start loving yourself. You got to learn to start forgiving yourself in order for us to love others. Believe me, I know what I'm talking about. At one time of my life was so unmanageable. I didn't care. I didn't care how much I hurt people. I didn't care what I did to other person until I learned. I take the ownership of my own mistakes. Yes, I became addicted to pills. I start drinking. But I take that ownership because that self-pity kills you. So believe in yourself. I could say a lot of stuff, but I know the bus and I know Leonard over there, those old people are going to talk more. So if you need to talk to us, be free to talk to us, please. Do not be afraid to talk to us. We're here because we care. I could say.
My name is Joni Maswaga, and I've been with a wellness program for 15 years. Prior to coming back home to work, I was at the Whiskey Jack Treatment Center in 2004. I worked with youth, a majority of my employment. I worked with kids from all over the north, from Shamarwa to Tule Lake, even from Labrador, all over Saskatchewan. So one of the students said to me, "Why are you working at Whiskey Jack? What about us?" So I came home. That student graduated already. I came home knowing that I can make a difference in someone's life. I work hard to help our people. So much drug abuse is happening in our community. So many of our young people are lost to the drugs that are being laced with other drugs like fentanyl. Even the drinking of the young people. We're going to have an outbreak of liver cirrhosis in a couple of years because the way the young people are drinking. They're not mixing their drinks. They're chasing their drinks with other alcohol. The drugs, our young women, our young girls are being exploited in our community. Our young men are being taken advantage of when they're passed out or high on drugs. They don't know what's going on. We have lost so many young people. Young generation that should be our leaders, our educators, our doctors. We're losing them. And there's so many of you that are talented, that you have something set forth for yourself. You can make a difference in our community. You matter. We do a lot of crisis on call in our community. I've attended I don't know how many calls to complete suicides. I've attended calls where there's a man beaten up, a woman beaten up, kids left alone at home, kids crying for their parents. We do a lot of work for our community to make it better, to help anyone that wants to help. So much drugs have taken over our community, so much violence. There's no need for violence. You guys, if you have something against another person, talk about it. Reach out for help. There's people in our community that are willing to help. We have educators, we have educational assistants, we have bus drivers, janitors. If you don't feel safe, talk to someone. Don't turn to violence. Bullying is a big topic in our community. Lots of people are bullying each other. There's no need to do that. You don't know what that other person is feeling. There's a lot of violence. Our women, I go to the courts too. 1 month, we had 27 women charged with domestic violence. It's the domestic violence is increasing in our community, which shouldn't happen. So much young people are getting hurt. With this incident in our community, like we're losing so many young warriors, our protectors. The warriors are supposed to protect the women, but we're losing them. So many of them, we're losing them. You young people need to make a difference. You are the future. You matter. You're not alone. Like April said, we have an open house. We don't turn anybody away. Come and see us. Come and talk to us. Our doors are always open. And whatever you share is confidential. So if you need to talk, come and talk to us. And if you need to ask questions, come and ask questions. We won't turn you away. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon. My name is Lucy Miswaiga, and I'm the Community Health. And they just changed my title that I didn't know about, Community Health and Wellness Administrator. I joined the team, the Community Health and Wellness team last year in June of 2022. Prior to that, I was the STAR/FASD program coordinator or manager. And I worked in that position for many years. We do have a lot of individuals that are affected with FASD, and what I see in our community today, the ones that are affected are the ones being used as runners, being used as the ones to go and sell for that drug dealer. And it's sad to see that. I wish there was something that could be done with our individuals that are affected with the drugs and the alcohol. Sadly, we don't have that in our community right now. We still do have a FASD program, and they work out of our new health office where we are right now. Excuse me, we moved to the new health center 3 weeks ago. I think it was 3 weeks ago, on actually November 20th was when we moved to our new health office, so we're there now. We're no longer at the at the health division office here in Rossville. We are now in Fort Island. So that's where our office is, and that's where our open house is going to be on Thursday, November 14th from 1 to 3 o'clock. I supervise the program, the staff, and right now we're having a difficulty because of, like what the other staff mentioned, that drugs is a big issue in our community right now. And how do we deal with that? We cannot deal it alone as me and my staff. We need the whole community to help us out. We need you guys, we need all the resources, because we can't do it alone. For a community as over 9,000, we only have 1, 2, 3, 5 community wellness workers, and that's not even enough. That's not even enough staff to work with a community this size. So right now we have a support worker that's being advertised. So if you know of anybody that's willing to work and join our team, it's been advertised for maybe a year now, maybe longer. We also have another position that's being advertised. It's the harm reduction coordinator. So that's another position. So those of you out there, if you're listening, apply. And like I said, we need your help. We can't do it alone. Although everything gets thrown at us as the community health and wellness workers, we can only do so much. Like I said, there's only 5 of my staff that are community health and wellness workers. And I help out when they're out and about doing their work. Somebody comes in, nobody's there, or they're out there doing their home visits or seeing their clients. I help the staff. And also, we also have an intake worker. She's back at the office. Her name is Yura Balfour. For those of you that don't know her, you can, and if you would like to do a referral, you can talk to her. And our number is still the same, 204-359-6704. So if you would like to refer someone, any of your parents, your friend, you can call that number. Maybe you can write it down. We do not have cards, but hopefully in the new year we will have cards for all the staff, and also we're going to be doing more programming in the new year. Wednesday, we will be having a networking meeting. The networking meeting stopped for a while. For some reason, I didn't want to take on, I was taking on too much a load on my shoulders, so I had to let it go for a while. I needed time to think things over and think about, like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do differently? How can we do it? So right now it's pretty hard to do the work that we're doing because of the fact that we can only do so much. And so with that, I want to thank you all for being here today. And if you need to talk to someone or need to refer someone, like I said, you can phone the number 359-6704. So when you can ask for Yura Balfour. She's the intake worker, or if she's not there, you can ask for me, and if I'm not there, you can leave a message. So with that, I want to thank you and thank Corey for being here today. We invited Corey last year as well, and he came. I think this is your 3rd time here. So we're going to be inviting him again in the new year. For those of you, you can pass on the information to your friends. We will announce it. Okay? Thank you.
We have a lot of war veterans from the First, Second, and the Korean War, and a lot of men that enlisted. A little after the Second World War, my dad joined the Army 2 days after he was 18, and he was there for 5 years. And there was a lot of men from here. In recognition of that, the chief of Norway House at that time, Andrew Crate, there were 2 chiefs from all over Canada that received that recognition because we had a lot of war veterans from here. We only had about 2,000 people, and almost all of the men from Norway House, and some from Cross Lake joined from here. So we are a community of warriors, and we have a lot of strong women. And the thing that I find working, a lot of our youth are very, very talented. And that gives me hope that you guys will make a difference. You guys continue to get educated so you can help us, help our community. I see a lot of love. And the last few months have been very, very difficult for me. I lost a lot of people. 2 of my grandchildren lost their dad on November 8th. And it was very, very hard for them, as well as for me and my wife and our children. It was hard to deal with. And we lost another young man the past week from Owens Point. Well, in fact, we lost two in the last couple of weeks. Those are very difficult, and I know that you guys, the young people, you have a better idea on how to help each other. The boy that was buried, that 14-year-old, I was at that funeral, and I seen a lot of his friends. My daughter coached him in hockey and baseball, and she was there too. And a lot of the guys and the girls were crying. And that showed me that the teachings about community, love, compassion is still there. I still see a lot of that in our youth. And I'm very, very thankful that we are going to be doing more to do battle against drugs and alcohol. Because we need our leadership to step up. We need our elders, ministers, parents, everybody to get involved. We are part of the problem. We can be part of the solution. We can help each other. And I see a lot of love. And seeing all the young people here, I feel really, really good. Because I know we have a powerful future. We have a loving community. And that's all I got to say for now. Thank you.
Danse, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Sarah was saying the old people are going to talk longer. But, you know, this afternoon, mga kabitagi sigag, Minentaman, I'm so grateful that we had great presenters. Nahichik, Vitamagitsik, Kawantutagwe in our community. Presenters that are pointing out to some of the things that happen in our community that are very harmful. And it seems to me that we're looking at a hopeless situation. You know, that's what say again pag-usin mo niya matsuin in our community here. But I want to encourage every one of you, the young people in this gathering. Kakape Mamawiyak. My name is Grant Kweski Capo. I work with the University of Manitoba for about 18-20 years. I retired from there. And I've been an ordained minister with the United Church of Canada for 36 years. And I worked at the school, at the high school as a guidance, as a school counselor for about 5-6 years. And I really enjoyed doing that kind of work. I am 72 years old, great-grandfather. I have no thought of retiring. What says, I'm too young for that. Hey, you know, I don't focus on what's, you know, it's tragic what's happening in our community. Mihtatigon. Iwabahtamak kitiskonigan no kaisi muhtemaga. And in my mind, if we're not going to move as a community, kisaspin muna kwas kawidut no magigon guys panik as a community, then we're condoning Itay na makikita isip mo temaga. We're contuning that behavior. Whatever happens when we contune, if there is a tragic incident happened like a couple of weeks ago, we're part of that. If we're contuning that behavior, we should be ashamed of ourselves when that happens. Just think about it. Think about your life. Mamit po nito, matsuin nani si Pahpiagwe. To think about what can we offer as individual persons in this gathering. Let's look at the person that comes to us. Wahu tuinikise. Think about them in our kingship circle. Ewa humaya. Ewa humaya. We're related to them. How do we begin that relationship? We begin to work on that relationship by sitting down, and then listening to tao. Listen to that other person, what they're saying to you. And listen not only with your ears, but listen to them with your heart. And do not interfere what they're telling you, what their story is. Just listen. And then after a while, when you're mindful to what this other person is saying, question the person's wishes, desires, the person's needs, and all that. In the end, we affirm that we understood what this person is telling us. And we end our conversation with a loving speech. And to them, my friend, I love you. Isaac Eaton. That is wherein the hope lies. Egutanima, orchi paguseni muer. Egusisi kanop matut kanop mitweho. It's about building a better community, one at a time. We can't become a healthy community when we're trying to build a whole community all at once. It only starts one-on-one. I hope that you're hearing what I'm saying. It makes sense. And I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank you and acknowledge your gift of listening. Egusi.
You guys have been really, really good, fantastic listeners. But like I said, we want to hear from you. You guys are what matters, and that's why we're all up here today. Let's have one more round of applause for all the people in the panel. Let's have one more round of applause for our guest, Corey Guest. And last but not least, I'd like for all of you guys to stand up and give yourself a round of applause. Please stand up, you guys. You guys deserve it. Let's go. Come on, you guys. Stand up. You guys deserve it. You guys did very well. And this is just the first step in us getting better and healthier for tomorrow. So I'm going to get Grant to do a closing prayer. Everybody stay. And then we're going to do one more draw, and then we're going to close out the day.
Let's take a moment. Take a moment and prepare ourselves to Tanas komaya kuhtawinaw. To give thanks to Creator God, kami ni this day. Inas komaya. Anuhtawinan. Our Heavenly Father, we nas commitnan for the many blessings that you have given us today. We chewinan, walk with us as we journey in this life. Kita ginas komita kistom itigoy semua. So enemenan uhtawinan. Nisu kamoinan tibestigian. We chewinan kaganat sienascha. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.